Welcome to the Munk Podcast, your sanctuary for self-discovery, personal growth, and emotional healing. I'm your host, Parag Lokande, a shadow coach, spiritual mentor, seeker, poet, and a student of life. This podcast is a heartfelt journey into understanding and embracing your true self. It is designed to help you navigate the complexities of the human experience with wisdom and compassion. Join me on a journey to self-discovery and personal growth as we explore the power of self-healing. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 34 of the Munk Podcast. I'm super excited you're here today. Today we are continuing our deep dive into milestones and stages of growth on the journey of becoming your higher self. Now, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. This journey is, in fact, what psychology calls the journey of individuation. It's a fancy term, which basically means figuring out who you really are. And guess what? This idea has been around for a long time. It was actually introduced by a famous psychologist named Carl Jung, and many others who followed him. A quick tip for new listeners, I recommend starting from the very first episode and then working your way up to this one. Each episode builds on the one before, just like chapters in a book. So it makes more sense when you hear it all in that order. You see, the whole point of this podcast is, and always will be, is to make personal growth and healing easier to understand. A lot of times healing can be heavy, confusing, but my goal has always been to simplify it with relatable stories and examples. And most of which is through my own personal experience, my direct experience. And it's a lived experience for me. If something's not my direct experience, you'll hear me mention that, because many times, things can resonate with us, but we may still not experientially be living it, embodying it. So I'll obviously clarify that, but I try and keep away religion, spirituality, or concepts that are, beaten down. So I try to approach this completely from a personal experience point of view. So with that, let's get back to the stages of growth. In the previous episode, as you know, we've talked about the first stage, where we often see life as something that is happening to us. Yeah, it's a victim state, as though we've no choice, but then just to be at the receiving end of life. Mostly, life at this stage can look reactive. It can be all about how to manage what gets thrown at you, or we've also called this, like I said, the victim state. So example of these victim states can look like you got bad grades on a test and immediately feels like it's out of your control. Or a friend ignores your text and you assume, oh, they must hate me now. or I guess I'm not good enough to be their friend. Or you're stuck in traffic, or the internet goes out and you think, why does this keep happening to me? I think life is just against me. Or you forget to do your chores. When your parents remind you, you say, I didn't have time. You should have reminded me earlier. Or you might think, I'm just bad at something and I'll never get better, so why even try? These are some examples of the victim state. We also talked about how this whole journey is not linear. Initially, it's not like living on certain levels of a building. Instead, it's more like a maypole. For those who don't know what that is, a maypole is a tall wooden pole decorated with ribbons, flowers, and traditionally it's been used in May Day celebrations, particularly in Europe. And during this festival celebration, um, there are dances or maypole dances, and people hold the ends of the ribbon and they sort of weave intricate patterns around the pole by moving in opposite directions. I'm sure you must have come across the visuals somewhere in movies, and it's quite it's quite out there if you can look up. So my point in comparing the healing journey to the maypole initially is like the healing journey initially is like a maypole dance, where we may have several parts of us in victim states, but then there are also other parts of us that may exist in higher states. So it's not really right to judge anyone about these states. It's not to categorize someone as a victim. That's what I wanted to clarify here. Anyways, today let's talk about the next stage. In fact, let's sort of build up a bit on how you get here. So say you've lived in the first stage for a long time. You've been a victim for a long, long time. You've kept repeating patterns. You got fed up of doing the same thing again and again. Say life has tossed you and spun you around for a while. And one fine day, you wake up to this sense within that enough is enough. I'm not going to take it lying down. So say one fine day, there's a sudden shift in you that changes how you suddenly experience challenges and setbacks. So instead of seeing life as something that's happening to you, for some reason, suddenly you begin to see that what if it is something that is happening for me? What if it's something that's happening for a reason? Yeah. In other words, when something doesn't go your way, instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? You sort of start thinking, what can I do to learn from this? How can this make me stronger? Or if a friend is rude to you, instead of feeling hurt and powerless, you can choose to set boundaries or understand their behavior. And you might realize it was never about you, it was more about them. So the second stage is like saying, hey, life's happening for me. All this is happening for a reason, so I can learn from it and grow. Now, it's important to note that these stages are about your lived experience. This is extremely important because we can read books, we can learn about these attitudes, positive affirmations, and we can even have these positive self-talks when things happen. I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to an embodied experience, as in it needs to feel very embodied. Sometimes we can rationally agree with this notion, but it's important to check, is it our lived experience? Our lived experience may still be that of a victim. Who knows? So something might happen, and then you might feel deeply that, why does it keep happening to me? But then rationally, because maybe you've read a book, you're like, oh, no, maybe I should see why maybe this is happening for some reason. Let me see. You're sort of trying. So there's this polarity going on. I'm not referring to that state. What I'm talking about, what's your instinctual reaction when something happens to you? You see, each of these stages are about what is your instinctual reaction to life. It is something that is it something that is happening to you, or is it something happening for you? So say something bad happens to you, and instinctually you start looking for life lessons in something, or instinctually you start taking responsibility for something, or instantly your gut reaction is like to make it happen or take action. Then you can say those aspects of you are on the second stage of life, which is life's happening for me, not otherwise. So just wanted to clarify that. This is a state where you believe in taking full responsibility for how you want to experience life. And that's how it's so different from the first stage. There's this sense of agency, you can say. You see everything is happening, or everything is an opportunity to grow or to make changes or learn from. Now, like the previous state, this stage 2 is a spectrum. Yeah. Let's again build into this slowly. So let's say you're on stage 1. In fact, let's say you're on stage 1, but the extreme left end of the spectrum. So you're a complete narcissist, zero self-awareness, total victimhood, and trying to see life as your enemy. And then you are going through the incubator of life, repeating patterns, same relationship, yada, yada, yada. And then you start getting fed up. You start going through life and life experiences. It starts to change you. You start moving on that spectrum towards the right. So now you're less of a narcissist, maybe you're moving more towards being an empath. Okay, but again, you're still on stage 1. Let's say you're still on that victim state. As you come to the extreme end of that stage 1, let's say something arises in you, agency arises in you, and you start to go, hang on, maybe life's happening for me. Maybe there is a reason why this is happening to me. Maybe there's a reason why the patterns are repeating. Maybe it's trying to tell me something. It's trying to show me something. And that is when you begin to move into stage 2. So you might still have one leg in stage 1 and the other in stage 2. That's also normal, yeah? That's how you're gradually moving on to stage 2. Yeah. So one end of your spectrum, you could have one leg in the victim state, and the other leg would be in the second one, and you're barely learning to take control of your life. You're barely learning to take responsibility for what is happening to you as you move into the stage 2. So the stage 2 is about now taking responsibility, taking action, seeing life as your teacher, seeing life is happening for you. It's not against you. And you start to develop control. Slowly, you start taking more and more control, more and more responsibility. And therefore, you start now moving on the spectrum from extreme left to extreme right of stage 2. Now you're on stage 2, and you're now moving towards the right end. The more control you take, the more responsibility you take, the less you depend on others. You start being fully in control. You start moving towards the right. Now, the problem here lies in control. You become a control freak as you start moving to the other end of the spectrum. You've developed so much control that you find it impossible now to depend on others. You find it impossible now to trust others. You can't delegate anything, and eventually, you may even land up taking everyone's responsibility around you. And that is how the extreme right end of this spectrum feels like. Stage 2, extreme end of the spectrum. So the stage 2, you can even say that this is a spectrum of control state. So if we call the first stage a victim state, we can therefore call the second stage a spectrum of a control state. You may also say that individuals in the first state are likely to be pessimists. Naturally, because if life's your enemy, it's very natural to feel a pessimist. On the other hand, in the second state, it's very likely that you're an optimist. That, hey, if you're in control and if you're making everything happen, and if you start to see life's happening for you, obviously, you're going to see the bright side of everything. So you see, folks, how you slowly and gradually transition through the spectrum of each state of victimhood to control state. So the second stage, which is life's happening for me, is a spectrum of control. And that is where too much control starts to lead to burnout. As you start to become more and more control freak, you start to grow more tired. You start to realize you're less in control. The fear of failure starts to really reverberate through your system. You really start to freak out, so you start controlling even more. And the more you do that, the more you move towards the right on that spectrum. So how do you get out of victim state? The way to move out of victim state, as we have seen, is by taking responsibility. And if you take that too far, that is, if you become a control freak, then the only way to move out of this control state into the third stage of life is through surrender or letting go. And that is what eventually happens. You get so tired of living a life of a control freak that you start to experience complete burnout, or life will constantly show you that things are going out of control for you until you reach a point of complete crash and burn. This sort of work, I believe, shadow work especially, is highly potent at this particular point in your journey. If you're at this point in your life, which is the closer you are to burnout, the faster you will start to surrender or go deeper within. And I often pay attention to this aspect with my clients. I'm always trying to see what aspects of their life they've reached a place of total burnout. Because if you're not there, guess what? You're somewhere on the spectrum of a control freak, which means you still have some fuel left. You still have some control to exert on yourself or on life. The ego still has you in its grips, and it will try to find you some other ways of being in control. But it's only when you reach a place of complete burnout where you truly go and realize being a victim hasn't served me. Now being in control hasn't served me. What's going on? I have no other way out. So I can't go on like this anymore. Help me, God. So this sort of work is highly potent, especially at this point in time. So the process of surrender, if you really look at it, is not easy, because it was control that saved you from being a victim. So while you are in control, it feels more safer because things are in your control. And it largely got you by. Largely, you've made friends with life. Largely, you finally see life is not against you. But then when you take it too far, the process of surrender gets extremely difficult. And I have the deepest respects for individuals who go through this. As imagine, this is like them saying to themselves, being a victim took me nowhere. It only scarred me, made me helpless. So then I became a control freak. But then being a control freak has taken me nowhere either. You see, at that point, the ego is so tired, so defeated, that it feels the most vulnerable at that point. It feels like it has lost the complete will to go on anymore. It's burnt out. But you see, the burnout and the feeling of defeat is exactly what is needed to start surrendering. It actually becomes a catalyst for greater surrender. That is where you need shadow work. That is where you do inner child work. That is where it gets extremely easy to lean into your emotions, feel them. Because until then, your mind's saying, oh, why worry about emotions? We got other things we can do. We got other solutions we can, we have other tools we can use. Let's just try a little more. Let's just try that option. Let's just try this option. So until then, Emotions are secondary. But at this point, the ego is completely defeated. It has no idea how to move forward. And this is the point where you start surrendering. It becomes a catalyst for great surrender. And this paves the way for you to move towards the third stage, which is life is happening through me. So, folks, shadow work is the best modality to take you out of control state and deeper into surrender state. So if you feel totally defeated in any area of your life, it doesn't have to be all areas of your life. When I say totally, I mean the ego needs to believe that it has tried everything under the sun. It has nothing else left to give. There is this total sense of defeat. There is this inner voice saying loud, I cannot go on anymore. I cannot live like this anymore. That is the best time for surrender or letting go. Until then, for most, life is your best incubator. Life is your best teacher. Life is your best driver to bring you to this point. So that is why in spiritual traditions, it was often like you hear stories where all these masters would send their disciples away. They would send their disciples back to life. And they would say, you come back when you're totally defeated, or maybe this is not the right time for you. And I think that is where what they were trying to convey. So I hope this makes sense. I mean, I really hope I've been able to walk you through stage 1 and stage 2 gradually, and also do justice to this aspect of the spectrum along the way. So folks, that wraps up today's discussion. We've explored how life transitions from feeling like it's happening to us in the victim state to life's happening for us in the control state, and how then burnout ultimately leads to this powerful process of surrender. Remember, these stages, again, aren't linear. They're not in a straight line. We flow back and forth through them. We keep coming back again to see deeper truths, deeper meanings in them, and that's okay. It's all part of the human experience. The key is to notice where you are without judgment, to take responsibility when it feels right, while also learning to let go when control becomes exhausting. If today's episode has resonated with you, take some time to reflect. Think about where you see these patterns in your life. Are you holding on too tightly in some areas? Or are there places where you still feel stuck or in the victim mindset? And if you're feeling defeated right now, know that you're not alone. Surrender isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to a deeper wisdom within you. The universe is always guiding you, even when it feels like chaos. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave me a review. It really helps me get this message out to more people on their journey. Until next time, remember, life isn't just happening to you or for you. It's ultimately happening through you as well, which happens to be the topic of our next episode. So keep going, keep growing, and trust your journey. Thank you, much love, and see you in the next episode. Take care.